I have never in my life watched a Purdue game where they win. Every single time a Purdue game is worth my eyeballs, they look like the worst team ever assembled. I never got off the train. I'm on the train, and I've been on the train since birth.
We're hanging out with Have Good Sporting.
Welcome back in to Have Good Sporting after a delay. Okay, I missed a week and I apologize. It will not happen again without warning. How about that? Missed a week of hoops. We're gonna catch back up on college hoops, tell you guys what's going on. Then new AP Top 25 just dropped. We will review that. And then I'm gonna give you some teams that I love in March, some teams that I hate in March. And then last thing in this episode, keep watching, but skip to the end if you want. We got a new segment, made a whole intro and everything for it. And it's just my rendition of any segment you'll ever see on a sports podcast. It's pretty basic stuff, but I made it fairly unique in our own way. So let's get back to the top of my notes here. Catching up on some college hoops. I was in Gainesville last weekend visiting the grandparents, visiting the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. Watched Florida take Arkansas to the woodshed. 111 to 77. And man, listen. Here's what everyone's saying about Florida right now. If you go scroll through your social medias or through, especially through Twitter, every single person that has a take about Florida is going to tell you, man, I don't know. I don't know why people aren't talking more about Florida. This team's back. The guard's starting to play well. Like everyone is trying to be the first one back on this Florida wave now that they're mowing down their SEC opponents. But, you know, if you're trying to convince people that you're the first one on the train, it means you just got back on the train. I never got off. I never got off the train. I'm on the train and I've been on the train since birth. Since birth, I've been on the train. But listen, Florida, and I might have said after our first SEC game, I might have said we're going 7-11 in conference play. I might have said that. But and if that means that I was off the train, then you know what? Maybe I was off the train. But about 2 games later, I was like, okay, we're good. We're good. We're gonna go 14-4 in conference play. Now it's looking like, hey guys, we might go 16-2 in conference play. The boys look the bo this might be a little bit outlandish to say, but Florida, this stretch of Florida, or this stretch of basketball that Florida is playing right now, might be better than they ever played last year, barring the run to, the national championship, obviously. But I mean, 111 to 77, Darius Acuff did nothing. We were right behind the basket. He was driving. I mean, Acuff is a very good player normally. He looked, it turned from really good and really confident in the few games prior that he's been playing to against Florida. He was doing the same kind of stuff and it just looked reckless. Like throwing it up high off the window with spin, trying to get it above the bigs, trying to score. Then it would miss, we'd get the board and we're racing in transition. Or if you want to slow it down, then now our guards can give you a bucket one on one. Urban can shoot a three off the dribble. We have it all. We have it all. And everyone wants back on the Florida train. They want to act like they're the first one that said, "Hey, are we forgetting that Florida, yeah, they have a couple losses, but it's to the top teams and now they're winning by 20 in about every game." Everyone wants to be back on the Florida train first. Unfortunately, I won't let that happen because I never got off the train, right? So, Florida beats Arkansas in spectacular fashion, and I got to attend it. I will talk a little bit more about attending basketball games in person later. Last week, Texas Tech defeats Iowa State, another top five win for the Red Raiders without JT Toppin. I got more to talk about this later too. There and Texas Tech still might be a team that I love in March, despite the loss of JT Toppin. But Texas Tech is mowing down top five teams. You want to talk best? I mean, and it's fairly common to say that Texas Tech has the best resume in America because name a team that's been in the top five, Texas Tech has probably beaten them. Obviously, they've taken some losses that they shouldn't have, and they're prone to like, maybe their ceiling isn't as high without JT Toppin, and they're still prone to lose one or maybe a few more of those games they're not supposed to lose. Certainly could lose one in the tournament, I guess, but I think the story with Texas Tech and with really what the story has to be if you're going to be a good team, and this goes for any team out there in America, is you lose your main guy, your star player, things shouldn't just crumble. And things haven't crumbled for Texas Tech. And Iowa State, for my estimation, not anymore, but I think Jefferson and Momcilovic, don't quote me on that pronunciation, both could be all Americans. Like Iowa State is no slouch of a top five team. They're a top five team that's playing well and has talent. And Texas Tech beats them without JT Toppin. And it's a huge feather in Texas Tech's cap because things could have crumbled. Like you lose your double double guy, your guy that's going for 25 when you need him to, and you're still winning. You're still winning. So listen, I'm not out on Texas Tech. Same thing with North Carolina. I'm not out on North Carolina at all. We're going to get to more of that later. We're going to get to more Texas Tech and North Carolina later. But let's move on to the next game. Another SEC game here. Bama defeats Tennessee in an epic choke job by Tennessee. Tennessee was up 11 at half, lost by two. And Bama, let me tell you something. These guards for Alabama have so much confidence. So much confidence. This was a guard play game. If you go look, Gillespie for Tennessee and then Phylon and Wrightsell for Bama, all three of those guys went off. Honestly, contributed for like most of the points in this ball game. But I don't. The bigs in this game didn't do much for either team, which kind of makes yourself wonder if the guards are going to show up. Oh, I'm sorry. The guards are going to show up for Alabama and Tennessee. Maybe the SEC isn't screwed in March. Maybe this team, isn't, or maybe the SEC as a league isn't down. It's just that Florida has been dominating everybody. Maybe the SEC gets a few Sweet 16, Elite Eight teams. You know, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. But a huge choke job by Tennessee. But Bama, I believe Bama is still perhaps has an avenue to tie for a regular season SEC championship. So look out for that for Bama. They still got something to play for. And then I want to talk Michigan and Duke and a little bit of UConn. Um, but Michigan and Duke, and this is how I tend to fill my bracket out. When the time comes around, obviously the top four teams in Ken Palm or the AP or Evan Mia or what's the other one, the net rankings, whatever you want. I'm going to take a heavy look at those guys. Say, hey, maybe is this a very uh, chalk Final Four? Do I just go top four in my Final Four? This year, and I didn't do it last year, and last year ended up being that way. Um, but this year, man, I might have to because Michigan beat Illinois, and what they did to Illinois was kind of what Florida did to Arkansas and what Duke did to Virginia and Notre Dame in this last week. It's these top teams are they're not just sliding by and having great seasons. They are like massacring teams down the stretch and getting better and better and separating themselves more and more from the field. Like the I like Florida. I love them. Okay, I love them. I'm I'll allow myself to put Michigan and Duke in their own tier because what they're doing to teams right now is is pretty ridiculous. And the Big 12 is tough because the Big 12 has a lot of good teams and they've all been beating each other, which is why I have to leave Arizona out of that tier one. But the Big Ten, Michigan's running through it. Okay. They beat Illinois by I'm not gonna pull up the score, but they dominated them. And selfishly, I'm looking at teams that I think could beat Florida because I think Florida size-wise, with the size of the bigs and the way they run the floor, I think Florida's so hard to beat. But Michigan with Mr. Yaxel and Morez Johnson and the 7'3" Ade Mara, they're big, man. They're big, and they might even be a little bit bigger. No, no, there's not a set of bigs that run the floor as well as Florida's does. Trust me on that one. But in terms of like Chinelu gets a little aggressive with the ball for Florida, and I imagine him going up against Michigan, against these guys that actually compare size-wise and defend well. And I'm like, I don't want to see 2024 Chinelu. I want to see 2026 Chinelu try to back down and get a bucket. Because Chile's been great this year, been an offensive weapon and the best defender in the country. But last year it was kind of like when he had the ball in his hands, it was like, oh God, pass it, pass it. Like we're scared of what you might do with the ball. And I don't want him to turn into that version when he plays guys that match up to him physically. I think Michigan matches up to him physically. That's kind of a little scenario I have in my head, like Chinulu in the post against Michigan is what that if a hypothetical Florida versus Michigan matchup happened, I feel like that's what it comes down to. And I really don't know who wins, but I think, Michigan has a good chance, obviously against any country, against any team in the country, but especially in that situation. But sorry, I keep talking about Florida. I'm being selfish and biased, and I apologize. So let's get back to the Michigans and the Dukes of the world. I guess my final comment there is that they're dominating. Okay. The best teams are getting better and they're separating. I think when you rank teams, obviously you have to rank someone third and fourth and fifth and sixth. But honestly, if you wanted a realistic sense of how far ahead Michigan and Duke are, it's like they're one and two, and there's like no one else deserving of being in the top five. It's like UConn is sixth and Florida is seventh and or Arizona is seventh and Florida's eighth or something. I don't think there's a team worthy of being in the top five alongside Michigan and Duke. That's how well they're playing. That's how much they've separated themselves. So we'll see. We'll see come tournament time. All right. Enough of that. Oh, UConn. I want to touch on UConn a little bit. They're not quite in the Michigan Duke tier to me, but they just dominated St. John's and they look really good. But the UConn, if they lose in the tournament, it's going to be the same way they've lost every time. They're going to defend well, but they're a little bit slow and their offensive sets take a really long time. And I don't think they have a one-on-one guy that can go get a bucket when they need to, especially against the best teams in the country. I mean, UConn's not winning the national title. Just saying that. All right, let's move on. New AP top 25. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on 1 second. Michigan's at 3. Arizona's at 2. What happened? Yeah, I guess that didn't move at all. All right, Duke's at 1. Correct. Arizona at 2. Incorrect. Michigan at 3. Incorrect. You got to switch those. Michigan is, I don't know what else Michigan has to do to these top ranked teams to be worthy of a number 2 spot. Arizona, granted, they're worthy of a number 2 spot, but the Big 12, they like every week, the Big 12 gets ranked very, very highly. Arizona has lost only a few games, and they keep winning against the highly ranked teams in the Big 12. But there's so many, I don't know. I don't know about Arizona. I question them. But yeah, I mean, I just And maybe I hate Arizona because they beat Florida. It could be. We might chalk it up to that. All right, a bit of mumbo jumbo here in the middle of the episode, but let's fly through this. UConn at 4, Florida at 5. That's the correct top five. Those are the five best teams in the country. I don't think anyone has an issue with the top five, maybe the order of the top five. Texas Tech back in at 10. Good for Texas Tech getting back in the top 10 without JT Toppin. Nebraska and Michigan State, they're at 8 and 9. I think they're very similar. I think they deserve to be right there at 8 and 9. I'll talk about Nebraska later. I think that's a team. Okay, Nebraska has been 1.5 point favorites in like 20 games this year, and they continue to win. So I really don't think they're not a metric darling. It's just that when they play teams below or at their level and a little bit above, they win. Their losses are all just to teams they should lose to. I think that's gonna be the story of Nebraska in March Madness in the tournament is that, they're gonna beat everyone on their level or below. The second they play the one seed in their region, they're gonna lose. I think that's a pretty standard season for Nebraska. All right, moving along. Not a new segment, but just a little mini segment here before we get to the segment of the day. Teams I love in March. No shocker here, Florida, Michigan, Duke. Those teams, assuming one of them, assuming they're all in different regions, Duke and Michigan will be, they've locked up one seeds. I think Florida moves up to the one line if they win the SEC tournament. And I don't think that's outlandish to say. If you have a problem with that, come see me. Florida, Michigan, Duke, they will all be penciled into my final four, given that they are in three separate quadrants. Nebraska, Nebraska, and Michigan State, I like in March. I think teams coming out of the Big Ten are battle tested the same way teams in the SEC and the Big 12 are. I'm a big fan of the power conferences this year. I think they're but I'm gonna pick some Cinderellas. Don't get me wrong, I will pick some Cinderellas, but your standard Big 10, Big 12, SEC, I'm big on those. I'm big on how those conferences are shaping up this year. Nebraska, Michigan State, I told you guys they're very similar in my eyes. I think they beat the teams they need to beat. They shoot a little bit above their weight, but they're just going to go ahead and lose to the teams that are better than them. Nebraska and Michigan State will be penciled into at least the Sweet 16 in my bracket. We'll see matchup wise how it transpires with them getting to the Elite Eight, maybe the Final Four. But here's what I wanted to say to the general college basketball public that might consider themselves out on Texas Tech or North Carolina because of injuries to the star player. First of all, if North Carolina and Texas Tech lose early in the tournament, it is going to be a what if season. You're going to say, what if North Carolina had Caleb Wilson? What if Texas Tech had JT Toppin? What if you're actually a really good team that can recreate them in the aggregate? Shout out Moneyball. And North Carolina and Texas Tech are still really good. Texas Tech just proved they can go beat a top five team on the road. North Carolina has still handled business since beating Duke. I think they took a loss somewhere in there, but nothing major. And both these teams are still very dangerous. And you lost two forwards. They're going to say that guard play carries you through March. I think you lean on the guards if you're either of these teams. And hold on. Sorry. Okay, sorry, folks. I had to answer something there. But getting back, North Carolina, you got Visar and you got Trimble. I don't hate the starting five, and the reserves are still rolling out despite losing Caleb Wilson. And then Texas Tech, you got Christian Anderson, and then what's that guy? Not Tutu Atwell, not the Rams receiver, but Atwell. Atwell. I forget his first name, but you got two good guards there. And they're scoring well in the absence of your star player. So I think when you see maybe a Texas Tech on what are they going to be, a three? They're going to be a three seed probably. And then North Carolina maybe a 4 or 5. But if North Carolina's in a 5 seed and they don't have Caleb Wilson, they're going to be a very popular 5-12 upset pick. And I'm not saying that that won't happen. Obviously, the 12-5 is a terrifying game for any 5 seed, but that a lot of people are just going to look at Caleb Wilson's absence and say, 5 seed, no star player, you're losing. And I say to you, go look at the fact that they're still good without the guy. You got Seth Trimble, who's turned into quite a good player in my eyes, and then Visar, who's picked up a lot of the slack. He's no Caleb Wilson, and he doesn't play the same style of play either. But he's a good player, and it's a good team, and it's North Carolina, right? Why can't a 5 seed North Carolina get to an Elite Eight? I wouldn't go as far as to say they make the Final Four. I would not go that far. But I'm saying I like North Carolina and Texas Tech to go further than people think in March because I am personally not as pushed away by the fact that they lost their star players. Especially if North Carolina gets a 5 seed. That's gonna be, I mean, it even might convince me to pick against them, but I like North Carolina and Texas Tech. I do. All right, couple more teams I love in March. I just put this as top SEC teams. Obviously, I like Florida, but Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, I think all those teams are still capable of winning quite a few games in the tournament, perhaps. The SEC is considered down, but it's because the league doesn't have multiple teams at the top. It's just Florida, and they're beating everyone else. But in tier two, it's still really good. And you have Alabama who can score on anyone, prone to fall apart. Okay, prone to fall apart and get blown out. And then Tennessee, prone to just look, terrible sometimes. Look like they have never ran an offensive set ever. Um, but I'm not out on the SEC quite yet. I don't think it's just Florida. But we'll see in March, obviously. Teams I hate in March. Teams I hate in March. The team I hate the most will be coming up in the next segment, which you guys got to watch. But I'm going to give you 3 others that I hate, not as strongly as the main team that I'm going to hate on, but teams I just cannot get on board with. I'm going to start with Houston. Houston, I had them playing in the national championship in the preseason, and I have grown to just this team gives me so much pain. I want to go to bed when I watch this team. I won't get too aggressive there. But Houston, I was talking to this with my dad. If you get a 5 point lead on Houston, you are going to win the game. They cannot come back from a deficit to save their life. Their offense looks terrible when they're down. I do not understand how a team that is so good is absolutely incapable once they fall behind. They are so, they're like bad. Oh my, God forbid they're down 8 points. I mean, you might beat them by 30. I watch this team and, it's back and forth. The first half, it's tied. And then if the team goes 2 for 1 and makes a two and then a 3 pointer and Houston's down 5, game over. The game's over. Because they're going to come down and take the worst shots. Their offensive scheme is like terrible when they're down. I don't know what they're doing. Kingston Fleming's kind of looks terrible when they're down. And I don't know what it is, but I'm just telling you, if you're playing Houston, just do everything in your power to get a couple point lead, and Houston will give up, and you'll be good. I'm out on Houston. I'm out on Houston out of just pure hatred. I'm not putting them in my Final Four. And I don't hate them. I don't hate them. It's just very painful to watch them try to navigate a deficit. And I mean, if Houston beats you, they'll suffocate you, and they'll beat you by a lot. But if you can just hang with them and take a lead, boy, you're winning easy. You're winning going away. All right, Kansas. there's plenty of content on this page about Darren Peterson, and I do not hate Darren Peterson. He is a fantastic player, and I don't have character issues with Darren Peterson. The pure fact is he doesn't play a lot of minutes, and Kansas might be better without him. That being said, Kansas just got killed by Arizona, and I'm not even on high as Arizona, or I'm not even as high on Arizona as other people are, you know? I got to prepare for these episodes more. I'm like forgetting all the things I was going to say about Kansas. Um, Kansas, I also I don't I man, teams I hate in March. That's a pretty harsh name for a segment. Teams I don't love in March. Louisville, Kansas. I put Louisville and Kansas in this same kind of branch of team where they look like the best team ever some days, and but that's like once a month. And it's just because they can score 100 or have a guy that can score 40. And then other times there's no game plan or someone's out or the other team's just better or everyone's missing shots. And essentially this whole list of teams is just teams that are really good but can't win six in a row in March. So Louisville, Kansas, Houston, teams I don't love in March. The team I really hate in March is coming up in this next segment. Let's roll the intro.
This rocks! But this can kick rocks.
All right, this rocks or kick rocks. One thing I think rocks, and one thing I think should kick rocks. This is kind of that same sort of segment as like a top five or a Mount Rushmore, like a buy sell segment. It's just my significantly better and more unique version of it. Um, this rocks. Give me attending basketball games in person. Obviously, I told you guys I was down in Gainesville for the Florida versus Arkansas game. Sellout, tremendous crowd. The O Dome is back. Florida is a blue blood. The fans and the students know it. Awesome atmosphere. But here's where basketball wins over football. We parked for free a couple blocks away and we walked in the stadium, and there's no real long line to get into the stadium, no real long line at concessions. Well, you're right on top of the court. Obviously, smaller arena, more intimate environment. You can hear everything that's happening on the court, which I love. Well, you can hear it unless the rowdy reptiles are getting rowdy, and they were pretty rowdy. But it's you get it scratches that itch of in-person sports, but it's not like going to a football game where this is a whole day ordeal and people want to go tailgating and then you got to go wait in the line and you're out in the sun and your team obviously might lose, especially if you're a Florida football fan. And then you got to get out. It's traffic. You parked further away than you did for the basketball game. You paid more money than you did to park for the basketball game. You didn't win by 40, you lost by 40. Concessions cost more, the line's longer. It's I don't know. I think I'm out on attending football games in person. I think the couch experience way better. But I'm not out on attending basketball games. I had a very, very enjoyable time, and it's something you can do in 2 hours. It doesn't take all day. I'll say 3 hours because the Florida Arkansas game lasted very long. The second half, there was like 25 or 30 fouls and like six challenges. And then the media timeouts and the teams calling timeouts, it was chaos. Um, but yeah, attending basketball games in person rocks. Football, however, can kick rocks, but that's not my kick rocks. My kick rocks is Purdue. Purdue can kick rocks. Purdue 5-6 in their last 11 games. I have never in my life watched a Purdue game where they win. Every single time a Purdue game is worth my eyeballs, they look like the worst team ever assembled. And they're always top five or top 10, and they're always beating up on someone inferior, and I'm not watching because it's not worth it. And then the second they play somebody worth their salt, Brain Smith misses 14 shots. Trey Kaufman-Renn is like, who is this guy? Who is this guy that's highly touted and we thought was going to be an All-American? This guy stinks. Fletcher Lawyer, God knows if he even plays for Purdue anymore. But and it's not that I'm picking them and putting $5 on them and losing $5 on them. It's that that is the reason. That is the reason. Every single time I do that, Purdue plays like the worst team ever. And Purdue's going to be a 2 or 3 seed. Whoever they play in the first round of March Madness, I will have beating them. Um, I don't hate Purdue that much, but the second they play a team I think can play with them, Purdue's out of my bracket. And I don't even care. They can win it all for all I care. I just refuse to write Purdue's name more than maybe once. So Purdue can kick rocks. 5-6 in your last 11. The Big Ten is too much for you. You're Purdue. You're not a sports school. Definitely not a football school. Don't even start it with trying to be a basketball school. You stink, Purdue. You stink. Okay. We're going to get this clipped up. We're going to do some longer sections of this video, maybe post that as their own videos. But we're going to get this up. It's Monday. We'll be back maybe no, I got to do I'm doing play-by-play for some baseball games this week. So that'll be fun. Still trying to get a job, man. If you're like the CEO of ESPN and you're watching this, just hire me, please. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. One more little bit here. This is me looking for Purdue's offense anytime they play a top-ranked opponent. Yep. Can't find offensive efficiency anywhere. Goodbye. Love you. Goodbye.